There's a community there in Maui that are reeling right now, of course, because they have lost more than 100 lives and more than 1,000 people are still missing. And of course, individuals there following these fires are looking for who is responsible. They want to put the blame somewhere, and we completely understand it. And last night, the Emergency and Safety Administrator, Herman Adaya, he went ahead and took the fall. The head of the Maui Emergency Management Agency resigned abruptly Thursday, a day after saying he had no regret about not using sirens to warn residents of wildfires that devastated the historic seaside community of Lahaina and killed at least 111 people. The siren system was created after a 1946 tsunami that killed more than 150 on the Big Island, and its website says they may be used to alert for fires. The now former administrator Adaya, he cited health reasons for his resignation that came so suddenly, but really, was that what was going on? And also, should he have been to blame for not sending off the fire alarms? Here he is in an exchange with CBS News reporter Jonathan Vigliotti about his decision not to use the sirens.
Do you regret not sounding the sirens?
I do not. And the reason why, and
so many people said they could have been saved if they had time to escape. Had a siren gone off, they would have known that there was a crisis emerging. And as we know, so many bodies were found in the ground as the flames caught their heels.
Give you the answer?
I do, but I wanna get it out there.
Let him finish his
I'm
answer.
sorry, there's a lot of people
you're talking,
who want
you're not letting him
answers.
talk. If you want to talk, come up here.
I'm ready for the answer.
Then wait.
the sirens, as I mentioned earlier, is used primarily for tsunamis. And that's the reason why many of them are found, almost all of them are found on the coastline. The public is trained to seek higher ground in the event that the siren is sounded. In fact, on the website of the Hawaiian Emergency Management Agency, the following guideline is provided. If you are in a low-lying area near the coastline, evacuate to high grounds, inland or vertically to the fourth floor and higher of a concrete building. Alerts may also come in the form of a wireless emergency alert. Had we sounded the siren that night, we're afraid that people would have gone Mauka.
Yeah, so that was Ndaya explaining why he didn't use the sirens. And since he took so much criticism and flack for not using them, as far as I'm concerned, Brett, his explanation seemed to be on point, as in it would have caused more damage than expected. It's sending people to higher ground, but also the sirens weren't located anywhere where the damage was truly done. And so forcing him out of a job, I've got a few issues with it, particularly given that it's a white reporter questioning and undermining this man, and he's a native man, and knowing the colonized state of Hawaii, it gave me some feels. What are your thoughts, Brett?
I mean, I don't see any problem with holding people in positions of power accountable and asking those questions. I could see the definite, like, read the room, dude, vibes that I saw. And that seems to me like an absolute vulnerability in the system that is designed. That if it's just an alarm that goes off, and most people are taught to go inland when the alarms go off, it seems like an absolutely reasonable thing to do to find other ways to warn people to get out. And when you read a lot of the accounts of what happened that day, and you find out that a lot of people were actually just hunkering down, waiting for someone in a position of authority to tell them whether they needed to leave or not. And that is a central theme of what's happened with a lot of America in the last 15 years, really actually dating back to Watergate, but really intensifying exponentially in recent time with people like Donald Trump and a lot of actions taken to undermine, and basically the people in power really leveraging themselves out of having to be held to account for things. But I mean, really what they needed to do, it sounds like, is to have a working system that could tell everybody that there's a fire. And Lahaina is a beachside community. It's right there on the water, and a lot of other people in positions of power need to be held accountable too. They were asking questions like, why didn't you turn off the power when there were huge winds coming in that were resulting from a hurricane that's kind of blowing by the islands right now? Why didn't you turn it off? Folks are circulating a photo of a dangling power line next to a fire. Why did that happen? It's tough. It's a rough situation. A lot of people are dead right now because of this horrible disaster, and I think people should be held to account. I think people will be happy that the person in charge at the time that this occurred is no longer in charge, and it makes people feel like they have some kind of sense of consequence. Whether it was the proper consequence, these things just kind of have to happen at a certain point where, like, if you were in charge and a lot of people died, and it was a fire, it wasn't an earthquake, it wasn't a hurricane, people weren't given the proper opportunity to evacuate, and your communication system failed, you should be held to account.
See, I think I have no issue with accountability. I have issue with someone being forced out of position or feeling they need to leave when they did what was right and what was logical that did save lives, because that's often seems to be what we do. We just say, let's find a head to roll, as opposed to let's actually get to the bottom of this. But again, I have significant issues with the United States, even its colonization of Hawaii, and trying to tell people there how to run their land, to do what's best, because you would have to know the land very well to know I should not run the sirens, because people will go to higher ground. Because as you've noticed, as you said, it's a seaside community. But also, as you've said, there were issues as far as power and what was going on. And we know that now, well, because of those videos that you also noted showing power lines starting fire, and also data suggesting that there were serious faults in the company's power lines. And by that company, I mean Hawaiian Electric, which is the #1 leading power provider there in Hawaii. We know that lawsuits have been filed. The suits contend that the company was negligent in the operation and maintenance of its equipment. Among other things, lawyers say the utility should have shut off power to prevent its lines from starting fires during periods of high wind and drought, a practice employed in California. And although Hawaiian Electric didn't comment much on the fires, because now that they have at least 4 lawsuits filed against them, it doesn't appear that they would have been prepared regardless to shut off the power. The New York Times also said this. The company's chief executive, Shali Kimura, said at a news conference on Monday that the company did not have a program that could shut off power preemptively to prevent wildfires. She said such a program would have required coordination with emergency workers. Power shutoffs would have made it impossible for people to use medical equipment, water pumps, and other essential devices. But of course, as we also know, is that capitalism is king. And Hawaiian Electric is suffering financially in the wake of not only the wildfires, but the blame that seems to be placed to some extent on the utility provider. And there are a lot of utility companies that are kind of fearful of the economic liability they could befall when we know that these natural disasters are happening more frequently and more intensely because of global warming. And this note from the New York Times says that those lawsuits against Hawaiian Electric have spooked Wall Street traders who fear that the utility will not be able to shoulder liability claims that could add up to billions of dollars. Hawaiian Electric stock price has fallen around 68% since August 7th, the day before the wildfire started, to about $12 on Thursday. While I could not give a damn about how much their share prices are, I am well aware that there are going to be other companies out there, like here in California, Pacific Gas and Electric, who will be watching closely, because with these wildfires, with all of these range of natural disasters being more intense and more frequent, they don't want to be on the hook, because there are things that they can't necessarily forecast. Like, because we know Hawaii has fires, but for something to be this intense and to be coupled with wind is, to some extent, from what I've read, rather unprecedented. And so as a result of that, the question becomes, to what extent do these companies need to be prepared for something of this gravity and nature, and can they be held liable? I think that those are very interesting questions, but we all need to be working together. It's just a hell of a thing that the island and the response is just to roll heads as opposed to let's figure this out. Brett.
I mean, I'm not gonna give the guy a pass. Like, if you run first of all, he resigned, and I don't know, sometimes he's giving, people, you care enough about the people to give them like the kind of catharsis that they feel that they need at that time. But I'm not gonna give the person in charge of notifying people they need to get the hell out a pass because he didn't have a system to notify people to get the hell out.
Yeah, oh no, I'm not talking about giving anybody passes. I'm talking about just rolling heads. That's always what happens. You just say, we're gonna take someone's head, and it's like, That's not
with you
it.
on
You
that.
took the wrong head, and now the bodies that are the problem are still running around here in control. Like, no, let's do this right. Let's ask the right questions. But also, again, I have issues with the fact that we have anything to do with Hawaii and the colonization aspect of it. And how dare you tell these people how to run their island? But then again, me and Dole Pineapple could argue all day long.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.